CS greetings, CS goers. It is IX Streams, and I'm here with the looking back video, which has not been done in a very, very long time. Took a little bit of time off that, and I've gotten one of my frequent collaborators, one Profeci, with me for this looking back episode. How are you going, Prof?
I'm doing well. Doing well. It's late. It's a late night, so I suppose it's the usual thing for us, for most gamers these days.
Indeed, got to keep the coffee intake steady so that keep the energy levels up. Because I actually just casted a couple of games with Anthrax, so I'm a little tired already. And then there was what we were playing CS the last night until 2ish, and the night before, and so
something like that.
Indeed. Well, this should give you guys who are watching an idea. I mean, Prof and I we started collaborating this year on some video content, primarily CS:GO Deeper, and I think we've become pretty good friends through it. We've worked on ESL Africa together as well, so I think this is an interesting one for me because I have interviewed guys who are friends before, but not this kind of one really. So I actually happen to know more about you than most of the people that I'd call victims or subjects of looking back.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, though.
I don't know. We'll see where this goes. So, I mean, for you guys who may not know, Profeci is formerly a Dota caster. He did Telkom Masters last year, did the final with Hellbird. He's been very prolific in the Dota scene, and this year moved over to doing CS:GO. First casting a couple games with on the ESL stream and some preseason stuff with a guy called Tea Time, and then doing more analysis work on Mega 8 earlier this year, as well as moving over to ESL Africa. And if I may say, doing a sterling job, which is why I roped you into doing some of the deeper stuff.
I don't know. A lot of people would disagree with you there, but it's nice to get a bit of a vote of confidence.
Well, I think for just for some context for you guys watching, players don't often agree with what analysts have to say, so that's kind of where that comes from, us laughing about it, because I mean it happens, guys will have a go at you at Twitter about something you said on a video, on a cast or whatever. It just comes with the territory, and not everybody's always going to agree with you. I think being a caster in a lot of ways, especially if you're a play-by-play, you get away with being quite neutral as well. If you're a color commentator or if you're a desk analyst, you're going to say something that's going to trigger somebody at some point, and you're going to have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, it also does. How can I say it? The thing is, it's like players seem to forget that we're not sitting in the channel. So yeah, you can say I don't know what you're thinking about, but I can't base on what you're thinking about. I have to look and see what you're doing, and base my ideas of what I know, what I've studied, and what I'm seeing. So, like, yeah, I mean, I've never been capable of repeating the feats of the players. That's not why I mean, that's why I am an analyst and a caster, is because I'm not capable of doing that, but I still love the games. And I've always had to, like, use my brain to try and, like, collate what's going on here and make sense of it. So that's how I've always had to do it. And I mean, like I said, players get upset. They tell me I don't know shit. They tell me that I'm not looking at this and this and this. I'm like, yeah, but I can't always do that. It's easy to say this was my plan and then turn around and say, why doesn't this guy know it? Like, why would he know it?
He's not in your team speaker in your brain, unfortunately. So, I mean, intention is the hardest thing to sort of model. You can look at statistics. You can look at tendencies of teams, the way they play maps. You can study demos, but you can't see what the intention was if it's not immediately bleedingly obvious because of the way teams move around on maps. So we can go into a bit more of how one analyzes CS a little bit later. I think let's rewind it to the age-old generic question: what was your start in gaming?
My start in gaming was probably, I'm trying to think the exact date now. That would have been probably early 2000s. I know that our family got our first PC in around about 1999, 2000. Before then, like I'd played DOS games, but it's like I don't know if you can really call that gaming. It's I think for the real
Those
first time I ever
games.
played was more like Wolfenstein, Prince of Persia,
Oh, okay.
Castle of the Winds, like really, really ancient games. So like that would be where I started. But the first PC that we ever got in the house that was like viable to play was in like it was about 2000, around about then.
Okay.
And then played a lot like that. Went to friends' houses. They had better PCs, better games. Dune 2 was one of the first ones.
Some Westwood
Counter
classics
Strike
there.
was Counter Strike was obviously a big thing as well. And then it just grew from there. Got my first personal PC in, I think it was 2004, 2003.
Late bloomer, eh?
Come from a tiny little town called Bloemfontein, bro. There's not a whole lot of anything in that town. I think we only got ADSL in 2007, so 384K. Hashtag winning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Very, very late.
So, I mean, being from Bloom, you would have also played with Cron, and I believe that you grew up with him in some senses as well.
Yeah. I grew up with him from school. I think we were at school together from about the age of 6. So yeah, I've known him for many, many years. I mean, we used to play 1.6 and the 1.3 Counter Strike against one another, but the problem is that like by then he was already so much better than me. It just never really felt like a fun game.
You're just getting beaten down, basically.
Yeah, like the problem is that he'd already been playing for so many years that by the time I had my first PC, like it was almost an unfair fight at times. So in general, like just because there were also, it wasn't only me, it was like 3 or 4 of my other friends. But it never came down to, oh, let's play CSGO, because we knew that like de facto Cron would win. That was when he still called himself Inox though. Before he changed his name to Tap for some stupid reason.
Well, for some context for people, Cron is a guy who's played in Damage Control and various other top teams, has been considered one of the better players. I mean, he hasn't been active this year after, I think he was in Flipside last year. Sort of an acrimonious
Flipside,
ending to that
White
whole thing.
Rabbit.
Divine
he
Knights
bounced.
as
He
well.
bounced through. Yeah, he bounced through a couple of teams. He won. Did he win or come second to DGC last year with Divine Knights? I can't remember now, but
as far as I know, because Shizzy was in that team as well in 2016.
Like, I mean, for those that know Cron well enough, he's a really good guy. The problem is sometimes he's not certain when to keep quiet about things. It's forever been his issue. So like he is one of those people that you do need, I think, sometimes to call out what he sees as BS, but he can sometimes take it a bit too far, I think.
Yeah, he's quite active on social media as well. Likes to have a go at people on Facebook. I don't really see him on Twitter, which is where most of us esports people live. So sort of mixing it up with the ZA Gaming Alliance casuals and on Facebook instead of fighting with the CSGO pros on Twitter. But yeah, let's see. Maybe he'll come back. I don't know. He seems to be in a bit of a casual gaming phase at the moment. So maybe we'll see him in future. I don't know. I mean, yourself, your playing career, you played some Battlefield, if I recall correctly?
Yeah, we started Battlefield 3. Was the first one that we really played. We got that one. I mean, I don't think we were never really going to win anything. But we had a couple of good guys. We had Mark Moore on our team at the time. I think we had Krios. Yeah, it was Krios, Mark Moore. It was myself. It was Cron. There was a couple of the other guys there as well. But I mean, that team was really just for fun, and didn't do a whole lot with it at all. I think we played the first season. We ended up getting FIB in our group, and I forget the other team. I think they came second at Rage that year or something like that. But yeah, I mean, that was really just for fun. It wasn't really. I've never really been super hardcore into actually trying to be a top level player. It never really interested me. I always found more fun in playing with friends, as such.
Yeah, and I mean, we play a fair bit of CSGO together and do a fair bit of swearing at the opposition. Sometimes it's on stream, but we try to behave on stream, right?
Yeah, we do try.
And sometimes it doesn't work. Mother, that slips out from.
Yeah, I've had many moments like that.
So you're starting casting. I mean, people who follow the Dota scene would probably more know you for Dota casting as opposed to CS.
Yeah, it actually started in like late 2013. We went to Rage. That year was the first time I went to Rage, was in 2013. And it had just been, I think TI3 had just ended around about then, and I'd gone up with some friends, and we happened to watch the final there with what was at the time Energy Legs versus the old Bravado lineup in Dota 2. And I'd been a massive fan of Dota 2. I played basically since beta, and all the rest played Dota 1 a ton as well. So I watched it there, and it looked like an interesting gig. It looked like there was quite a bit of fun, and that was around about the time that I think it's the DGL, like, because what had happened is that throughout 2013 DGL had to essentially deal with like a whole bunch of casters, something like 10 15 casters, and they kind of got annoyed with that sort of thing. So what they did was early in 2014 they created a system whereby you had to get licenses. And there were only like 3 licenses available. So essentially what they did was they tried to set up the situation for casting organizations to come together. And what happened essentially was that NavTV had gotten the gold license, or what would become NavTV had gotten the gold license. Then there was 2 other groups, and I joined Knoxville's group, Pro Multicasting, I believe it was. And soon afterwards, I was asked to join NavTV by Hellbird. So that was probably early 2014. And from then on, I was basically just always part of NavTV. And then everybody will probably know the rest of the story. But as the years went by, NavTV kind of like the groups got smaller and smaller and smaller until NavTV was the only remaining caster with any large number of people on board.
Yeah, and became as you say, the dominant sort of force. Of course, Knoxville went on to bigger and better things. Currently based in Berlin, I do believe.
Yeah, Ben did join NavTV and was actually part of NavTV for a while, but I think Ben always had ties to the rest of the world a lot more than the others of us did. So he'd already been basically planning most likely to move overseas for some years before, and got his opportunity. So,
good on
but he
him.
was part of NavTV for a little bit. Yeah, no, I mean he's a hell of a fun guy. I mean, if you ever get to meet him at an event, he's really one of the most fun guys that you can get to meet. And I mean, we'll probably get to it later, but some of the casting that he and I did together I don't remember much of it, but it was quite a bit of fun.
Well, I mean, let's maybe look at some of those casting anecdotes while you were with Nav. What were some of the notable events and the memories that you have of that time?
Well, I mean, my first LAN event was later in 2014 at the NAG Gaming League. That was essentially, it was a much smaller Dota tournament run by NAG at Rage, like almost in direct opposition to the DGC. And I was part of that NAG event. Casted the whole weekend. I mean, we did most of the setup the night before on the Thursday, doing checks and all the rest. And that was also, I think, that wasn't like the one event. Like I said, it was my first event, so I was just like really, really happy to be there. But it somehow transpired that every single time they came and gave us like our lunch tickets to go get food, like I would cast through every lunch. So as soon as the game was done, I would like rush downstairs and like, no, the lunch is done. You can't get anything here. It's just like, yeah, it was not an enjoyable event in that aspect, but otherwise, I think it was a hell of a lot of fun. That was probably the first event that I think it was the last event of the team that I'd probably call my favorite in South African CS:GO, which would be the old XTC Rain lineup. They kind of split apart after that year, but I mean, it won by Bravado. Although I think what most people will know about it is that that was also the year that the Pro Interns from what had become Energy Legs beat Bravado in the upper bracket final in a best of 1. And I mean, the stories around that was that Knoxville had gotten the entirety of Bravado except Donny and I believe it was Seam absolutely hammered on the Thursday night. So they were still recovering on the Sunday morning.
Wow, it must have been legendary if
Yeah,
it took until Sunday.
that was where I saw like probably the first time how good of a player Donny was, because like his entire team was falling apart around him, most likely because they were hungover to the point of like, you know, uselessness. And Donny eventually got to the point where like he was ultra carrying the game on like some ridiculous offlane hero that like had no business doing that, and he was just doing everything in his power to keep his team in the game. And like the rest of the team was so hungover, they just didn't do anything.
Knoxville,
I
dangerous
think
to
at one
drink
point,
with.
no, he's terrible. Like, I mean, some of the stories I've heard was that like someone had urinated in a pool and like someone else had dived into it. Like this wasn't the Bravado guys, but I mean, like those are the kind of stories that you hear. And you're just like, jeez, I'd like Ben is just a wild man when it comes to that kind of thing.
Well, I think let's talk about a couple of Ben things. There was we noticed on Twitter earlier this year when it was Ben's birthday of that whole thing about him falling asleep on a train and.
No, he woke up on a train on his way to Prague. He lives in Berlin, ladies and gents. So he was on his way to the Czech Republic from Germany, and he doesn't know how he got onto the train. He had blood on his pants, which wasn't his, and at some point on the journey, he'd upgraded to first class.
Oh my word!
It gets wilder every time you think about it. It's just that's mental.
I mean, you talk to various people. There's all sorts of stories of him getting up to mischief and like being found the next day, like under a casting desk, sleeping, having not gone home or anything to the hotel, nothing.
Yeah, no, I mean, in 2015 when I did the finals at Rage there for DGC again, I think he'd been booked into some dodgy hotel, which I think Burning Red takes the responsibility for. And like he'd stayed there the Friday night, and then he just said like he's not staying there again. So the Saturday night he decided to sleep at the Dome on those like horrible telecom beanbags that everybody used to steal. And I think I had also decided to sleep at the Dome because I had like some huge trip all the way across town and back if I wanted to travel the next morning. So I was like, screw that, I'm staying at the Dome. And I remember we had to wake up at something like 7:30 on Sunday morning, and we'd only gotten to bed, like terrible sleep during the night, only gotten to bed at about 2-3 on the Saturday night, woke up at like 7:30 Sunday morning and had to cast the DGC finals. Like, I genuinely don't remember much of those finals, to be honest. All I remember is, like, there was at some point where that was, I think, the real genesis of Castaway as the top-level player, because we actually spoke to a number of the Bravado players later that year, and they said that, like, Castaway would be, like, that was the next best player in South Africa. You know, as in, like, in the next few years, he would become the best. And, I mean, the irony is that the next year he would be the primary engine behind White Rabbit Gaming's beating of them. And the other thing that I think some people might forget is that the guy that helped them win DGC 2015 was part of the White Rabbit Gaming team that beat them at 2016 as well.
The wheel turns. It always does.
It does turn.
Wow. Well, thinking back to that 2015 one, obviously part of why it would have been so horribly late on the Saturday night is that's the GGC that was infamously DDoSed repeatedly. So everything went late. I was a player then. I didn't actually know you, but I also recall just getting like no sleep and having to show up the next morning early. It was a difficult time, no matter which esport you were in. I probably, if you were in one of the less popular games, you probably weren't DDoSed.
Yeah, I think I know Anthrax always says that like that your Battlefield without a hitch or something. He loves that story. He's like, Battlefield had no issues that year.
Because we did Dota, you guys were getting wrecked. In CS, we were getting DDoSed. So, dude, I was trying to play an upper bracket final for like 4 hours on Friday nights. Eventually, we gave up at like 2:30 in the morning. So it was like, okay, we will come back tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Holy crap, FML, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. 2015 was like I think it's an enjoyable year, but there was a lot of issues. I know that the like Nav TV itself. I mean, if you speak to some of the higher ups, they'll tell you that like 2015 was in general not a really good year for Nav TV at DGC. Like there was a lot of errors that we had to learn from very, very quickly.
Yeah, well, if you look at the roadmap between then and now, I mean, ESL Africa 2017, DGC 2015, there's a massive progression in a very short space of time in terms of the quality that's being delivered. And a lot of those people are the same people.
I mean, even VS when like it became a lot better. If you looked at them between just 2016 and 2015 was a huge change.
And even 2016 to 2017 as well, because for both of us, we of course both casted on Telkom Masters last year, which obviously became VS Masters this year. And for me, the feature of it was the technical pauses and delays from that point of view, which seemed to, in watching the tournament this year, not be the case. So overall, I mean, whichever org we're really looking at, there has been massive improvement in a short space of time.
Like none of them are perfect. It's just like which of them deal with their problems the best, really.
Yeah, this is true. So looking at your career, I mean, are there any other events that you sort of look at as sort of milestone events or have some interesting anecdotes on?
I mean, I think they all have interesting anecdotes. It's really just, can you talk about them? Would people be okay with talking about them? But I think by and large, it's for the most part. I think every event has had something that was memorable about it. Some of them might not be, something good memorable, but I think you have to
like
learn
building
from
your
all
own
of them.
desk.
Like that's just a funny story that happened. But I mean, the thing is, like, you get used to that kind of thing. I think if every event is memorable, then they all like you actually care about the event. And I think as soon as you get to that point where it just becomes another thing, I think is that stage where it's probably maybe not time to quit, but time to like reevaluate why you got into whatever you're doing right now.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, actually, we can touch on, because of course we both worked with Pansy at ESL Africa this year, and one of the things she was saying to us in being a British caster coming from ESL in Germany is that the way talent relates to each other, and by talent I mean broadcasters, casters, panelists, that sort of thing, overseas very different to here. She was sort of remarking on our camaraderie, the way we hang out with each other and we have a good time together. Whereas overseas they all kind of take their own corner and bury themselves in their phone or their laptop or their Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it does come from the fact that they do so many events.
Yeah,
whereas for us,
it's
Whereas for us, it's still like it's a rare thing to get an event, and that's why we treasure them so much. But I think it's always going to lose something if you don't treat every event as its own little special thing. I mean, maybe it's just the way South Africans are in general.
Part of it, I agree.
We tend to just be a little bit more friendly with one another.
Yeah, it's actually funny in South Africa. Even mortal enemies in esports are friendly to each other at events, which is always funny because
the thing is like
South African politeness.
The thing is, like, the scene is too big to have those like little kingdoms everywhere.
Or too small.
So yeah, that guy's your mortal enemy, but you got to see him at the next event anyway, because that's just how big the event is. So, what is the point in starting like a war there? It's just
indeed.
I don't know. It just doesn't seem very reasonable to do.
Yeah, and I mean that's also becoming more of a thing now because there are rival tournament organizers, whereas winding it back 2 years, it really was only Telkom and the occasional other thing, whereas now it's consistently things happening from multiple organizers.
Yeah, definitely.
Something else I'll pull out since we're on the subject of anecdotes. Red Eye was around last year for DGC 2016, and of course we both worked there. And yourself and Halberd were wearing some very nice waistcoats, which Burning Red likes to tell the story. But we're sitting in the green room, the break room or whatever, watching the broadcast with Red Eye, and he looks at you guys and he goes, "They look like professional snooker players." And coming from a British guy, like an older British man, it's like you could just kind of see that whole sort of snooker player thing going on. Where they come out with the music like wrestlers, but they're wearing a waistcoat and they're slightly chubby
Yeah.
middle-aged men, sort of thing. You guys weren't slightly chubby middle-aged men, but just the waistcoat snooker players. Are you ever going to live that one down?
I think the waistcoat. I mean, if you ever looked at how the top level events worked, it was always that these guys would wear like full on 3-piece suits if they were like if they were really baller, or they would wear like at the very least a suit. I was never really a fan of the full piece suit, so I decided like, well, I mean, I could go with the waistcoat, and I think the waistcoat just worked best for me. And ever since then, I've just stuck to that. And it just so happened that at DGC 2016, or the Masters 2016 finals, when we worked with Red Eye, it just so happened that I think there was 3 of us at the time, or 2 of us
Wasn't you
that had.
Wilson and Holbert that had the waistcoat?
Forget it. I know it was myself and Helbert. I don't know. There was another person. I don't know if it was
Or was it Rains?
Wilson, but
I don't remember.
might have been Reigns. But it was like 2 or 3 of us that had them on, and then Red Eye made the joke that like you look like snooker players because they traditionally walk in with a suit, take it off, and then have a waistcoat to look professional. All the rest. So I just always felt that I preferred the waistcoat over the full suit. I think it's less heavy on you, and it's like not as insanely warm.
Hmm.
So I don't know, and to me it still looks as professional as a full suit. So
Oh, well, nowadays you're the only guy wearing the waistcoat, so it works for you. But when you're on the snooker team, it really doesn't.
I don't know. At least I'm memorable, I guess, in some way.
I
Then.
guess so, yeah. But the irony, of course, is both you and I are on Code Red Esports, which is Red Eye's talent agency. So after being called a professional snooker player, you get hired anyway.
Yeah, well,
Memorable.
you have to be like in this industry. You can be as fantastic at the basics as you want, as anybody in the world. But if you aren't memorable, nobody knows you.
Exactly. Well, that's why I got a hat. Otherwise, nobody would remember me, right?
I don't know. I don't know how many bald guys there are in. Well, I mean, you aren't bald yet, but you're heading that way. So
Yeah, I do shave
uh,
it nice and shiny, though.
yeah.
Well,
So
I
I
mean,
mean, I don't
just
know how many of those there are in the scene casting these days. So I suppose you still have a couple of years left.
well, there's Tombas, but he is actually balding, and then there's of course Moses, who also shaves it nice and shiny. I mean, I was looking forward to like taking a matching Budhead picture with Moses, but unfortunately, he didn't make it for you, South Africa.
Yeah, that is a real pity.
No bald eagle
No, I
for
think I
us.
think I think Moses would have been a person that I really would have enjoyed talking to. So it was a pity. I mean, I know that we'd known a little while beforehand that he was coming, so we were all sort of waiting in anticipation about being announced, and then we never really got the announcement, which was somewhat upsetting. But uh, it is what it is. I mean, I think the Pansy was just as fun to talk to. Stories that she mentioned to us, I think, were more than as valuable. And I mean, yeah, she's not the analyst, so I perhaps didn't gel as well with her. But I mean, still, you can talk to her about a whole bunch of stuff, and I think she probably has more worldly knowledge than Moses would have. So she's far more valuable to talk to him than he would be in certain other areas, I guess.
Yeah, we of course had a braai with her before the South Africa finals this year, which was pretty valuable to get to know. And I think that's kind of where the whole like, hey, this is kind of weird. Like we're hanging out and we're actually nice to each other. What is this
Yeah.
thing came from? But she was great to work with. I mean, I would have like I don't know mud wrestled an alligator to get the chance to actually cast with her, but it was not to be. Burning Red got that opportunity, but overall, I think it was really great having her for the event, and I think it's definitely one of those great sort of life experiences one can chalk up as working on that event, and getting to work with somebody like that. I guess I hope for both of our careers that we do get more of those sorts of opportunities as well. So I mean, we were talking about DGC 2016, or should I say Masters 2016, where you're casting Dota with Halberd. you came into this year, did I think it was a Mega 8 event earlier this year in Dota 2?
Uh, yeah, Mega 8. I've done 2 events for Mega 8 this year. It was the CS:GO one was, I think, in beginning of April, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the Dota one was in May. I think middle May, end of May, somewhere around there.
So you did your first CS event there with the Mega 8. It was the Autumn CS:GO Cup, if I recall correctly, as to the title. But
Yeah, something like that.
so I mean, I worked that one casting with Burning Red. We obviously did the final. You were on the panel with Halberd and Conga Carl and Phantom. It was Phantom's first event as an analyst, and I think it was your first event as a CS:GO analyst.
Yes, yes, it was. That was actually a weird one because um, they grabbed me. I think they'd wanted to ask somebody else at the time, and he couldn't make it. He pulled out like in a week or something before the event, and then I was added in. Um, and I know that like Kyle had already been picked up, and I can't remember who else it was, but that like I was sort of like the last minute replacement. And I happened to do a good enough job to impress the people in charge, so I got hired for ESL. So I don't know. Maybe
That's
I guess I kissed the right ass. Maybe
right
that's
place,
what
right
people
time,
say.
eh?
Probably,
Yeah,
probably.
it's interesting how that works. You also did some casting this year in CS:GO as well. You did some, I think it was Pro League qualifiers with Tea Time.
Yeah, it was the ESL Pro League qualifiers. It was the very first game of the new French super team
G2.
against the reformed Fnatic. Like that online game between the 2015 Dennis Fnatic, the reformation of that team against the French super team. That was the first ever event or the first ever game that they played together. That was the first CS cast that I ever did.
No pressure then.
There was a lot of pressure. It was a terrible situation. I unfortunately happened to be at a friend on the day, so like I had to cast from his house, and um, his dog is like mental about anybody driving past the front door. So the
Oh
dog
my
would
word.
just constantly like break out into barking the whole time, and like regardless of what I did, change noise gates, to change whatever you want, like the dog's barking would come through on the mic, and it was just a terrible experience in general. And I mean, I learned a lot from that because I was used to like Dota casting where you can just talk for forever and ever. And in that situation, like that just wasn't possible. Like you had to get your words out in a second or two at most, whereas in Dota you had a minute or two to do it. And um, because I was so used to taking that long to be able to get my feelings across, like it just ended up being in general a terrible cost.
Well, I don't think there's a lot of people who can boast on their very first casting to thousands of people. Because I mean, at that point as well, it was early in the year before. I mean, it was after the major, but in that sort of lull of where nothing was really happening. So there were a lot of people watching because everybody was starved for CS:GO content.
Yeah.
So definitely a difficult first scenario. I mean, you could have run away screaming from CS:GO after that sort of experience. But I for one am glad you stuck around.
Yeah, I mean the thing is like you don't get into casting to become famous. I think people that do that tend to fall out much quicker than um, most would think. Like people, I'd say the layman obviously thinks that like oh, casters are just out for um, out for the glory, but it's like yeah, not really.
Naive outlook.
Like in general, like your first year of casting, if you're casting to 50 people by the end of your first year, like that's quite lucky. I mean, you might get 1 or 2 games that go like you'll cost like 1,000 or 2,000, but that's usually because it's being boosted by like people watching for betting reasons and stuff like that. So I think I know I've always held the position that people that are casters, it's an internally driven process.
Hmm.
Like you don't cast to impress others, you cast to. I'm trying to think now. Like you cast to because you enjoy it and because it makes you happy inside doing so.
Yes.
And it's like I said, if that is why you cast, it becomes a lot easier to justify the insane hours that you have to cast to get to the point where you can one day maybe cast to like 1,000 people, or you can cast on LAN. Like, you have to basically earn that spot by just spending years and years doing, or I mean, well, maybe not years, but like you have to spend at least 18 months accepting the fact that like I am terrible, I need to get better to earn my spot at the LAN, because nobody owes you anything in casting.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you might get somebody that likes you, and therefore you get more work, but that guy is not going to be the be all and end all of every event. So you have to actually be fully aware of being better and making certain that that comes across in a cast.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, with new guys that I've tried to bring into casting, and what I find with them is they tend to fall away pretty quickly because they get disheartened from casting to 3 people kind of thing. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the reality of it is that you're going to do a lot more casting to nobody than you're going to do big events, in your first year or two. I mean, my path has been a little bit quicker, I think, because of just the sheer amount of casting I did last year. And I think that if I can say anything to guys wanting to get into it, grind, 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 grind. I mean,
Yeah.
there were points last year where I was casting like, I think at one point, Burning Red and I casted like 21 days in a row, I think it was, or 20 days in a row. So it was getting to like crazy points where he was, going to get a divorce kind of thing if we carried on casting like that, because that's the level we had to grind at to improve. And I mean, for me, it was very valuable. But unfortunately, I think if you're a new caster and you're going to, cast once a week or twice a week or whatever, and then have periods where you're not active, people forget who you are very quickly.
Yeah.
You can't build up a following like that. Unfortunately, in South Africa, it still is small, despite these big events with the millions on the line and whatever. Actually, it's still very tiny. So I mean, if you get 50 people now, it's a major victory, because I mean, a year ago there were Bravado Carbon games that had 10 people watching. So
Yeah.
you're succeeding if you are. But I think, in general, as you say, it's not a thing that you get into to get famous or to get popular or whatever. Because unfortunately, players are always going to look at what you do with some sort of measure of suspicion, in the sense of like, oh, this guy isn't a former player or whatever. They want you to prove yourself, and it takes a long time for that to be a reality, if ever, really, in some cases. So, be prepared to take a lot of shit, basically.
Yeah. No, you have to have a thick skin. You have to accept the fact that people are going to tell you your shit. People are going to tell you that you don't know what you're talking about. The simple fact of the matter is that, like, if they're going to tell you that you don't know what you're talking about, you have to be honest with yourself going into that kind of thing. It's that you have to. I mean, you can't just get angry at them saying that, because it's not useful. It's like,
No.
okay, what are they saying you don't know, right? Is it, oh, you don't see the strats that they're pulling, or do you not know what they're talking about? Do you not know that like this is like a thing that's done? Like, if you can go in knowing that the prep work that you've done, that you've studied, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to study demos, but you have to have an idea. Parroting someone else's ideas is just useless. Like, how can I say it? It's like, the thing is, if your only ideas on anything in life or what somebody else has told you about said thing, it's just not like, is that your idea then?
Why are you saying it, basically?
Yeah, it's just like, can you explain why you think that?
I don't
Like, I
think
mean,
it's necessarily a bad thing to agree with somebody else, but you need to be able to put your own reasoning into it. Otherwise,
yeah,
you're not adding anything useful to the overall narrative of whatever subject.
yeah. Like, I mean, I used to have to like help some of the newer Dota casters at a time, and what I always said to them is that, like, I don't care what ideas you have, but if you can't explain them, they're useless. Like, you can have the dumbest idea. Like, I can think it's the stupidest idea. If you can justify it, right? However you justify it, doesn't matter. But like, at that point, at least you know why you're saying that. If X pro player says, Meepo is a good hero, and you say Meepo is a good hero, okay, and then I ask you why. No, it's just a good hero. No, but why? No, because X, Y, and Z says so. Okay, why does X, Y, and Z say so? No, that guy's just good at it. Okay, but that it's circular logic. It's like it can't be good because it's good. It has to, like if you can't
There is a
explain
reason.
something, then it's not useful to anybody, unfortunately. And that's the thing I've always held, is that if I'm going to be able to explain something, or if I'm going to sit on a panel and say something, I have to be able to explain it. I can't just say X team is good because, or X player is good because. Like, I have to have reasons for me saying that rather than just they're good.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Let's maybe talk a little bit about casting versus panel work. I mean, you've done a lot more panel work this year than casting, whereas I think previously it was the other way around. Are you preferring the panel work, or do you still prefer to cast? What's your jam?
I think they're both different things. Like they're both fun in their own way. I think casting is a lot more effort, but panel work is a lot more hours, if that makes sense.
Well,
Like,
the behind
because
the scenes
casting,
hours.
yeah, because like as a panelist, you have to sit there and watch physically every single game, and you have to keep track of everything that's going on, and what this team looks like in relation to that team, and you sort of have to make like a jumbled guess as to if A hasn't played C at this event and both are looking good, how is the game going to go? So
And the why of it, again, to come
yeah,
back to what you were
and
saying.
the why of it, obviously, and I think that makes panel work challenging in its own way. But in casting, I think is a lot more fun because you can, especially in Dota. I mean, I haven't done a lot of CS yet, so it's difficult for me to really say it. But I think in Dota, it's like that visceral thrill of you're the guy sitting in that. You're the guy explaining to people. You're the guy talking to people. You're the voice behind um, like Bravado winning an event, White Rabbit Gaming finally beating Bravado after so many months of pain and struggle. Bravado losing to Energy Legs in like some crazy best of one upset that nobody expected. And I think it's those moments when you get to be in that, like that defining moment in history. I think is really what essentially like what I love about Dota. And I mean, it's like the thing is, again, to have those events or to have those moments is fantastic, but you're going to have one or two of those moments in your entire career. So the fact that you get to you have to work to get to that point. But once you get to that point, it's that visceral thrill of being in there when something crazy happens and talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to agree with you there. And I think the overall love for the game, connecting one's love for the game as well as your love for your craft as a caster or an analyst, and then having that sort of seminal moment that happens as well is just an amazing thing. Unfortunately, my career's been a little shorter than yours, so I've had a few less of those seminal moments. But overall, it is definitely something to work towards. So I think for you guys, it's something one does need to keep in the back of your mind. I mean, a year after grinding these crappy online qualifiers and stuff, maybe you'll get to do something like that.
Like especially because in essays that a lot of the top people don't hang around very, very long. I mean, if you look at just for instance, like the CS:GO, the top level of CS:GO casters 2 years ago to top level of CS:GO casters now,
Very different.
I mean, it's very, very different. And I think that's why if you want to make casting happen, like you have to accept the fact it's going to be crap. Like it's like going to school. Like that you have to do it, but that is the crucible of where you're going to decide. And like I said, it doesn't mean anything if you decide it's not for you. It doesn't mean you're a worse person. It doesn't mean that you're a better person if you can make it through. It's just some people can, some people can't.
Yeah, and there's always space for guys.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things to understand about casting is that you need to like, I wouldn't say be yourself necessarily, but you need to like have a defined personality as a caster, because too many people like think it's just about talking loudly, or think it's just about, like for instance, Sadakist in CS:GO, like he's got those crazy,
The one-liners.
yeah, like the it's the Big Apple and Snacks is hungry. The thing is, like, the guy preps those lines, right? And if you look at how Sadakist in general is, like as a caster, he is very, like, he's bubbly, he's very energetic. Right, that might not. I mean, I don't know the guy from Boris Hope. I never met him in my life, so. But I mean, that's not necessarily who he is behind the camera.
Hmm.
And that's the thing. It's that, like, a lot of casters think that that Sadakis just talks really fast, and like he is this cool person, and da da da. Like, you have to work at that kind of thing, and it's something that I've always struggled with. Is that I struggle to get across excitement in a game, mostly because my nature is to be very, very analytical when you're looking at things. So I think one of the most important things to do is you're not going to be casting if you don't enjoy it. You're not going to be casting CSGO or Dota or League of Legends or Quake if you don't enjoy it. And I think if you get across that feeling that you enjoy it, because I mean, like I said, you love the game. And I think if you can get across the fact that you love the game, it makes people buy in a lot more.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. And I think you've hit on something that I really struggled with for the longest time, is to also get across the fact that I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Because the problem is, it's that sort of juxtaposition of something that's incredibly inconvenient to your life and is difficult and is thankless, and you enjoy it. And to try to get those things to sort of mesh. I mean, when you're doing a game number 5 on a 14-hour day of casting, and you're going into like third overtime, when internally you're going, FML, I don't want to be here anymore. Can somebody just please win? But you're casting the game and you're going, I want to make this an enjoyable experience for the viewers. I want it to be entertaining. So I need to make sure that I am bringing this across in a way that's enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the thing. It's like, you have to do those games between two low-level teams that, like, you're looking at it, you're like, this is bad. What these guys doing is like not very, very great. It's like, it's legitimately like bad CS or Dota or Quake or whatever. But the thing is, like, it's not relevant. People are watching because they want to watch, and you have to get across the fact that, like I mean, never. I think the other thing is to also be true. Like, don't lie to any viewer. Don't tell them what's good is good just because it has to be. Like, if it's a bad play, you have to say it's a bad play. Like, it's. I think lying to the viewers, especially if they know what is actually going on, I think can really turn them off you pretty quickly. So
again, the whole being authentic thing, and being truthful
you have
to your viewers.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I mean, it's not that you have to, like, completely wreck a team if they're playing badly. I mean, I had to cast many bad Dota teams when I was doing it. And I think the thing is to have fun, to acknowledge that what you're watching is not the best, but it can still be exciting, because people, like, I've often been accused of, like, never thinking outside of the box when it comes to CS or Dota, and like only thinking in this little, like, this is how things have to be, according to the rule book. And the thing is, it's not that. I can acknowledge that, it's like I work off the rulebook because I think it's the easiest way for my mind to process things. But the simple fact of the life is that perfect CS or perfect Dota or perfect anything really is very boring, because it's easy to see what's going to happen. Like, perfect CS is just never a mistake, but it's also rarely going to be something crazy, because crazy things happen because there are mistakes. Everybody is human. But that's where you see the things. Like, I mean, there's that famous clip of Black Poison on Cash against BVD at ESL, right? And he whiffs like the first 6 shots or something. And everyone's like, oh, this guy's terrible, this guy's terrible. And it's like, like, that is legitimately, the first 6 shots are terrible. And the next 4, because he's made all those mistakes, make that moment so much better, because he goes from whiffing to making a play that arguably just instills in his team, Black Poison is here, Black Poison is, like, he's on his game. And like, that might not have been the game-changing play, but that moment just felt like you could see energy spirits lift. And like I said, that's like it's 6 mistakes and then 4 crazy shots. And those 4 crazy shots don't happen if you played perfect CS till that point. So that's the thing, is that there has to always be a balance. Like there's good and there's bad, but bad often makes things a little bit more exciting because mistakes are always going to happen, and it's how players react to those mistakes.
And how they play off it and take forward the play off that. I mean, that Black Poison moment you're mentioning, if you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. It's what a really insane AWP shot followed by a no scope followed by whipping out a 5-7 and just like one tapping a dude and then switching to the AWP again and blowing another guy away after whipping basic.
It's a 90 degree. The second shot is the 90-degree no scope flick as the guy runs past him.
Yes, he's like,
he shoots him high, like he shoots him, and then as he repeaks, the guy crosses and he just cheers out of my server. Thanks very much.
90-degree no scope flick, easy, then whips out the 5-7 and domes the next day.
It's like that. That's for me. I think that's probably the highlight for me of ESL 1 at Rage this year. Like that's probably the highlight of the tournament. And like the thing is, you have to show the whole highlight because you have to show the first 6 stuff ups and then the 4 god shots, because I think without that, it doesn't do justice to the whole thing. Because it's like I mean, you, at a point it almost felt like you could see him starting to panic.
Like, and then as soon as he
and it's like as soon as he hit the first shot, then you just saw, like, you could almost feel it in the next 2 shots that like he knew that nothing was going to miss. And I think especially with him being like the reason that they actually turned the very final round of Cobble, I think was also just like a little bit of, cherry on the cake of the I don't know,
the poetic justice
cake. Yeah, the poetic justice cake, just the cherry on top. Black Poison getting 3 kills to break open the round.
Indeed, it was some pretty exciting stuff. So to rewind it to the whole ESL Africa online stage, I mean, there were 2 seasons of action. We both worked it, and I think our sleep patterns are forever changed for the rest of our life for the worst because of working on this thing and going to bed at 3 a.m. and all of that, and having to go to work the next day. But it was the first event of any kind that I know of in South African esports where it was a proper scheduled weekly online league that was broadcast at the same time and from a studio. That, all of those things together.
Metal State.
Well,
Metal State was first,
but not with those hours though. I'm trying to say the like 8 hours, 6-hour broadcast.
I think our broadcasts were like a little bit crazier, but like, I think Metal State still. It's probably just slightly better arrangement.
Oh, best of 1, so it made it certainly a lot shorter.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of complaints about online CS, and I mean, I share a lot of them. Online CS is crap. Problem is, justify any organization flying up a team and keeping them in a city for 8 weeks.
Not going to happen.
Now times that by 8 because you have to fly up 8 teams. It's not reasonable. They're trying to do it now in Overwatch League, and I mean that's what, a $20 million buy-in just for a franchise. That's not the player salaries, the stadiums that they most likely have to build, the marketing. So I mean it's outrageous, and I do share people's dislike of online events, but the simple fact of life is that it's the cheapest and it provides the most ROI for any organization, because the
return on investment.
Don't believe the BS that you get you read on the internet. There's no organization in the world that can just run LANs all day long and make a profit of them. I don't think there's any organization in the world that makes a profit off a LAN. Even Valve, Valve's TI, that's the most expensive event to attend in the world, as far as I know. I think it's about $100 a day or something like that for a ticket. Now, that's certainly worth it, right?
But that doesn't even cover the expense that Valve actually takes on the whole thing at all. Not even close.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to what MLG, the guy who owns MLG. According to him, the stage for TI costs more than any event they've ever run. And remember, MLG has run a major. So the budget for the stage of TI costs more than the entire budget of a CSGO major.
MLG Columbus 2016, one of the best majors ever.
Yeah.
Didn't cost anywhere near.
The one of the crazy Cold
Zero
jumping shots. That whole event cost less than the TI stage. So it's not reasonable to expect any organizer of any shape or form to actually constantly run LAN events, because it's just not worthwhile.
Yeah, online CS, online Dota, online everything is here to stay, because it's enough broadcast time that the organizer can show leading up to the LAN, which is the inevitable result usually of an online tournament, that they've broadcasted X amount of hours, had this amount of people watching, and therefore, sponsor can feel good that Red Bull or whoever can feel good that they've gotten some return on their investment. So
yeah,
that's what it is about. But of course, same as with ESL Pro League, when you work ESL Africa, you end up going to bed at some crazy hours and having some really interesting experiences. That's also where I must say, the whole casting versus analyst thing, it's definitely got its pros and cons, because I've done the full gamut. I did the desk host thing as well the one time. It gives you a lot of appreciation for the nuance that goes into these various things when you get to do them so frequently. Yeah. I mean, the casting thing is sometimes absolutely punishing. I mean, I recall one time casting with Anthrax where he's like, "Sweet baby Jesus, take me now." It's like 2:00 in the morning and it's going into overtime number 4.
Yeah, and he was sick when that day started. So I mean, it's just like that. Like that's where you also, I think, learn a lot of appreciation for your fellow casters and analysts, is because you can see the guys that will just sit there and it's hellacious circumstances. They've gone through an entire day's of 8 to 5. It's an 8 to 5 that they go to work for. They get home. Maybe they go home. Otherwise, they come directly straight to the
studio,
the event, or the studio, and they're leaving at 2:00, and they back 2 days later, and they
doing it again.
0 complaints. Yeah. There are people that will complain, and it's fully within their right. You don't think any less of them, because we've all been through that.
Yeah.
But you see those guys that are so wrecked. And you're like, how is this human being alive? And it's just they're here because they love what they do.
Yeah, shout out to Anthrax. What a trooper. I mean, he was deathly sick, on death's door, comes and casts for 8 hours into the early hours of the morning.
And the best part was, I think the reason that he was the most upset with everybody was not because the games went long, it was because everybody had told him that Limitless would wreck the other team, just completely stomp them. So he was like, okay, he'd done BVD versus Energy, so he'd saved whatever energy he could cobble together over the past 3 days. Knocked out the Energy Bravado game, which was crazy by itself.
And it also went on forever because of technical delays with
yeah,
Bravado.
So that deflated him, and then it's okay, at least Limitless is going to be quick. Nope. Double overtime, triple over. He's I just remember sitting there, he's just sitting there, just staring there, a person whose soul had been drained out of him, and just let me go home, I'm begging you. Just let me out here.
Yeah, the things of casting that are less glamorous, but I mean, take it back a year and you're at an expo or a weird event in the dungeon of a shopping center, and under even worse circumstances. So it can be worse. We can definitely say that with some certainty. In terms of what you're up to at the moment, I mean, we're in between seasons on ES Africa. We had the 2 seasons, the final, and the next season's only coming up next year, is the rumor that we're hearing now. I mean, we also heard a rumor to be starting soon, but it's not here yet, so we have to wait and see. But for your plans for the future, I mean, you're doing the Dota 2 noob stream, the Mega 8 sort of casual stream at the moment. How's that going?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I mean, we actually got that together sort of as a lark, because I mean, a lot of it came down to the fact that Mega 8 had said that they were going to, introduce a lot of new casters via the noob stream, or they were going to introduce a lot of new casters via the online section of the Mega 8 streams. And when it came out, it was just like, okay, but we know all these guys. I mean, certainly there was Camille Chickte is obviously coming up, but outside that, I was like mostly tried and true faces. So sort of as a joke, we like we made a joke like, oh, we should cast that kind of thing, and Beetle 001 was like, well, why not? So
Give
we
it a
sort of
go.
cobbled together, like we sort of cobbled together like a whole hodgepodge of people. I mean, we got Gmax, like shout out to him for like, I mean, I'd always known that he'd been into Dota because like he would constantly annoy Anthrax about it on Twitter type thing. But um, I mean, that guy also like instantly on board is like, yeah, sure, that sounds like a hell of a lot of fun. We're going to cast noobs. We're not going to make it serious. We got Penguin ZA, who's never played. I think he played like 2 hours of Dota before we got him onto the thing. So his only job is to like look what looks coolest, and that's what he picks. So it's like the coolest hat of the day as it goes, and that's like his job. So we got him roped in. Beetle does like the what is it, like the analyst desk
The
hosting
host.
job. Yeah,
Hmm.
so it's like a mini event that we do, and it's every Sunday, and it's really just a lot of fun. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on it, so we're definitely going to try to keep going with it in future. And in general, I think it's just we're intentionally not serious about, we're not aiming for the high, we're aiming for the low guys. So if guys want to ask a silly question, like why is this going on, why is that happening, or what is this hero, like that's what it's there for. And I mean, we've had a lot of questions where people will ask us like, what is this about, and that's what it's there for. Is because we can't have, there's no point casting to an elite community of 1,000 people when there's 5 million scrubs sitting outside the door and can't get in because you won't let them.
And the barrier to entry is too high for new guys in Dota
And that's
often.
just the problem. I mean, Dota is especially bad with it because of the barrier of entry, the burden of knowledge, that you
Mm.
have to know so much about it. So, but I mean, it's like that in CS as well. It's like that in anything, really, is that if you, I mean, dumbing it down is the wrong word to use. I think if you simplify it for people, like you start them on this, and then you graduate to something bigger, and then you graduate to something bigger. Now, I mean, you can only go to a certain point because they don't have the time investment, and they're not going to play enough of whatever game it is to actually get to that level to understand anything beyond that. But so long as you understand that, like you like set that limit of we shouldn't go any further than this, because once you go past that point, there's like literally like they're not going to understand what you're going on about because they don't understand the rest of the basics.
Mm.
But it also teaches us our basics because it reinforces, what do I actually know about Dota, what do I actually know about this game. And I think that's one of the most important things, is that fundamentals in anything make you better and allow you to be better, because you can get away with things like, if you know the rules, you know how to break them. And I think
Mm.
that's the most important thing with something like the noob stream. So the noob stream has been going well. So I think it's our 3rd week now, but I mean, we're looking to continue it for the rest of the season with Mega 8. We've got Gmax, we've got Penguin, we've got Sargon for our stats man,
The
we've
best
got
in the
Beetle
business.
1. We got Reigns, but I mean, we're adding a couple of guys in here or there, sort of as like a guest week. So we'll see how it goes. Definitely see how it goes. It's a lot of fun at the moment, though.
Yeah, it's been very entertaining. I've managed to tune in for the last few weeks. I didn't watch today's one though, but I'll blame going to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and needing a nap before I had to cast with Anthrax. So I'll blame that. Being old as well, we'll chuck that in too. I mean, you and I also host a show together called CS:GO Deeper, which we've been doing for a while. I mean, we were doing like recorded shows before, and now it's been more of a live podcast than before. Sort of evolved a little bit from being, where you and I would just talk endlessly about what we think about the current meta of CS and what teams are currently doing, to being a bit more of a show where we bring in a guest and talk to him about what he's about, and talk still about the, I guess, the deeper things of CS:GO, but the scope's changed a little bit.
I think it's had to. The thing was that while ESL Africa and Masters and whatever else was going on were happening, it's easy to talk about because you
Mm.
have readily available information. Is that since Rage, we've really had only ESEA, And the problem is, I mean, you know the struggle is that how many people have cast DSCA games? 2, 3, maybe. So if you
Yeah.
like, you maybe get 1 or 2 games an entire week to go and watch, and then like sometimes they won't even it won't even be good games being played. So I mean, the problem is like, sure, you can go and watch Energy. You can go watch a cast of Energy playing, like the 22nd best team in the country. But the reality is, it's likely not going to be a game that's going to provide you any value to watch.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think that was why we started, or at least to me, that was why we started bringing in guests and started talking about other things, is because we or at least I felt the need to start exploring what is the whole South African scene. Because sure, we can talk about an event when it's going on, but what happens when there isn't an event? Do we shut down CS:GO Deeper for 6 months while we wait for a next event, or do we
Hmm.
keep going and like bring in this player from this team to explain why his team plays like this, or what was the decisions behind this roster change, and that kind of thing. And I mean, like, a lot of the players are obviously, I mean, I don't know if they're scared, but might also be that they just
Maybe.
don't like us, which is 100% fair. But like, a lot of them do sometimes seem like they don't really want to say something because they think that we're going to fight with them, and it's like, not really. We really just want your perspective on why X, Y, and Z has happened.
Yeah, that's how I think of it as well. I mean, I've got no issue disagreeing with people, and people know that. But at the same time, when you've got somebody on a show, it's really about capturing their essence and what they think, as opposed to fighting with them. So it's really, really not about that. But interesting for you viewers, Shaun and I actually, we haven't spoken about why we, bringing in guests. It's sort of just happened organically. So it's not like this is the first we're actually reasoning it out here. Like, why are we doing this? Well, it makes sense to me. I was thinking in a similar space as well. So I find that quite funny. But my original intention with the show was to try to expand the narrative of South African CS a bit, because it's it's also a perennial problem in South Africa for fans that context is very much lacking when you get to an event, because there's so little content available. So you
Yeah,
don't really know the behind the scenes of something. You don't really know how consistent a player has been. Because I mean, like, I've also found it as a caster, like, I've latched onto at times in the past where, like, I've seen a player play really well at like one event, and I'm like, oh my word, this guy is a good player. And the next time I cast him, I'm like, oh, he's such a good player, and he gets like shat on. And it's because you've got such a limited sample size, and you're looking at it and going, okay, well, this guy must be amazing, but you don't see all of this other stuff or hear all of this other stuff from his colleagues, as in other players. You don't see
yeah,
all the other tournaments, and you make wrong conclusions. And like, as a fan, it's really difficult to be a fan of players, I think, because you have such limited exposure to them. Like, how are they as people? What are they like? I mean, it's only in the last year we've really even seen players on camera at events, because it used to just be only on the server and not even any live cameras in real
yeah,
life. So I think that's changed quite a bit. But the idea with the show is just to try to expand the narrative, to try to give a bit more information. I mean, give opinion as well. I mean, people don't always agree with the opinion, but that's the nature of opinion. Opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. So it's, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best or most right opinion, but I hope people feel it's valuable. I mean, I think the change to live broadcast has definitely brought with itself its own set of challenges and differences in the way one approaches it.
yeah. It definitely has. But yeah, it's just like I said, it does seem odd that like there's sometimes, like, very often, again, like I said, it's CS:GO Deeper. I don't think is for those 1,000 elite players in South Africa. It's for the five
No.
million outside the door, because at the end of the day, if it's only 1,000 people paying to go to an event or paying to watch you guys online, there's no buy-in. Like,
Mm.
who's going to watch?
Yeah, we are still in an extremely small stage with SA esports, despite the big events. Again, like, to reiterate, it's, when there's online streams and stuff, people only like 150 people are watching, sort of thing. It's not massive, and it needs to grow, and we need more people, I think, creating content, doing that sort of thing to help grow the interest in it, because if it remains for the elite few, it won't grow. And That while that's a good thing to have the sort of camaraderie thing going on that comes with it, it does, as we were talking about Dota, the barrier to entry for people watching is there. Or for CS, sometimes that can be the case for new guys rising up, new talent. There's a sort of elite club thing keeping them out. It's it's something that needs to evolve, and I think the industry will evolve as time goes on. I mean, things do change from being insular and tiny to being more international and inclusive. So let's hope it does. I mean, we obviously want to cast more and do more shows and speak to more players and stuff. So I think everybody involved wants the industry to grow.
Yeah. No, that is the ultimate objective. I think if you're in this industry if you're in this industry and out for yourself, you aren't in this industry. Like you're actively just. I think you're a negative influence. I think in the space then. Like you have to accept the fact that like things are not going to go according to plan, but you have to be okay with that and realize that it's not for you, it's for the whole scene. Because I mean, I've had discussions with people where they say that the scene is super strong. I don't think it's strong enough to survive shocks where, this massive, like say we get like a huge sponsor. If that's a sponsor decides like, no, they're not keen on this anymore. Because the problem is that like one sponsor pulls out, but because of that bad rep that sponsor has, he goes and talks to all the other sponsors. And it's not that they're actively doing it maliciously. They're just saying, yeah, like I did get involved, but it just didn't seem like it was worth it. And then everybody pulls out, and then all of a sudden you're not playing for 50,000 rand a month. You're playing for $500
a mouse and a keyboard,
like 2 months. And none of us want that.
Yeah, we don't want to go back. I mean, we can't go back to the dark ages and the bad old days of 2 years ago. But yeah,
and it's like you have to give people like VS props because they had to struggle through that. It's like, yeah, we give them grief now because what was it like last year? I think it was the DGC prizes were worth more than the Masters second place or something, and everyone's like, but that's crap. And that's just literally how life works, guys. It sucks.
Things happen.
I hate it. I myself hate to see things like that happen, but the simple fact of the matter is that you go to a sponsor and the sponsor gives you as much as he is willing to. That is like the limit. If you push beyond that, he either just takes everything back or just doesn't get involved again. And that's the one thing that everybody has to just understand is that like that is just life. It's not going to go to plan, and you have to accept that sometimes.
Yeah. And I think something maybe it'll also touch on if we go back to the whole deeper thing in content creation and that sort of thing. I think also what sometimes higher level players sort of forget is that there are fans and that there are younger guys and new people who aren't essentially elite level players who are interested in this, and those are the guys that we need to be drawing to this, and we need to be basically gathering and making sure that they're having a great experience following South African esports, whatever game it is, because without those guys, without fans, then we don't have anything. And I think there's too little focus put on the fans. It's in a lot of ways essentially we're all doing this for the fans, but there aren't that many fans, and the more we realize it's not about us looking good, whether it be as casters, as players, or whatever. It's about making sure that these people who watch, who are maybe a Nova 4, who maybe don't even play, that they're having a great experience and that they're enjoying this, because they're the guys who are going to tell their friends you need to watch. They're going to be the guys who are going to grow this thing. It's not going to be the elite players who grow things in that sense. I mean, obviously their fan bases, yes, but we need more fans. We need more people watching.
Yeah, we definitely do. And that's why you and I have both reiterated how many times that like all we need is those players to retweet retweet or reshare the post on Facebook, or tell somebody that you're playing tonight and this guy's streaming it. Like that's it's like 20 seconds of your day to do that kind of thing. But the thing is, it's like that then justifies the tournaments coming in and spending mad money.
Hmm.
Because I'm going to be honest, like, to me, I don't care about a tournament that happens once a year for 500,000 Rand. It's not important to me. I want to see every month a tournament for 50, right?
Consistent
Every
action.
single month. Because then I can say that this team has been the best for the first 6 months of the year. And this team, like, sort of overtook them in the middle of the year and then fell off. And then Team 3 came through and took over towards the end. But that's the kind of thing we need. We don't want, or I don't want, like previous years when VS was basically the only one carrying the flag for the most part, where it's like, it's Rage and then nothing.
For
Right?
until
Like,
next year.
I mean, think about it this year. If Rage had been the only thing that happened this year, right? And okay, let's just take out VS for this moment, but like, and put down only ESL, right? So Energy and Bravado, they qualified online, make it to the LAN, they play 2 best-of-3 series, and they either win or lose, and that's it, they're out, right? So you look at that, and you're like, oh, Energy was the best team of the year.
Based on
Were they?
2 matches.
Based on 2 matches. Right now, VS, at the old VS lands, yeah, sure, they probably played like 6 or 7 best-of-3s, but that's still the best team at one event. It's not like this year where we saw at the beginning of the year, BVD thumped them at
Metal
State, then thumped them again a month, like a week or 2 after they'd added Black Poison in.
It was a mega 8.
It was at Masters.
Yes, you're right.
Right, and then at ESWC, all of a sudden the tides are turned and Energy wins in dominant fashion. And then you get to ESL, and it's like, okay, well, now we've seen them at 3 events. Energy's won the last one, but BVD won the first 2, and there's no way BVD's going to be, there's no way BVD's going to not come in pumped for this event. And it just makes everything better, because as soon as we know the stories, it makes, that it just makes everything better. Like, if you know that Black Poison was an ex-BVD player for how many years, right? And like I said, the fans coming in this year might not know Black Poison from a bar of soap. They might not know Canny or Detrony or Sonic from a bar of soap. But if you can say Black Poison used to play for Bravado, he was one of their best players. He left there beginning of this year. He then joined their arch rivals Energy, and he's now going to beat them in the finals of ESL Africa on land at Rage in front of thousands of people.
Amazing story. But without all of those other events, there is no story.
That is the exact thing. I mean, if you looked, like, Black Poison is obviously the easy one to tell. But you talk about last year. Last year, a little organization called Carbon, which now no longer exists, created the team that is the basis for the 2 best teams in South Africa. Because each of them got 2 players from Carbon. Bravado got 2 players from Carbon, and Energy got two players from Carbon. And, I mean, Fady and JT, fantastic players. And it happens that Plexi is the guy that carries Energy at ESL Africa in the finals, right? And it's if you know those stories, everything becomes richer. It's like you delve further and further into the stories, and you get to learn, and you know the players a little bit better. So you know why there is that friction between Energy and Bravado, is that they have half of each teams. Like, these teams used to play on the same sides, half these players, so they will be naturally aggressive, or that this guy hated this guy back in the day, type of thing.
All the storylines.
It just makes things so much better.
That's
why. Yeah,
you first. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, like, that's why people end up watching, is because they know the storylines, and it just enriches the whole scene. It makes you're more likely to be invested if you know a story, and you're more likely to tell somebody if you're invested.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to give some credit to Metal State for creating some of those storylines at the beginning of the year not at the beginning, but March, with their tournament, where, that going into that show match that Energy famously won, sort of against the Grains, so to speak, with their new lineup before Black Poison was there. That whole, like, lead up with player interviews and talking about the potential bad blood from old teammates and that sort of thing. I mean, I think that sort of narrative sort of lived throughout the year. And, I'm really glad that they did that, because, again, you take back the clock a year or two, and the the way tournaments were done, it wasn't really emphasizing that sort of thing. And again, because we didn't know, there just wasn't enough action happening to be able to even sort of see that. Players didn't even have social media presence. I mean, it's only really this year that guys have even gotten Twitter, which has been,
Yeah.
I think, a big frustration as well. You look at the COD community and like some random players got like 3,000 followers, and there's Sonic from Bravado with 160 followers. He's the best player in Africa potentially, but
Yeah, that's
that's
no,
definitely
it
some.
is those kind of things, and I do think players need to be active. I think we need more cannies in the world because like some of the stuff he was
Absolutely,
spitting at ESL was like straight,
that
like
was
that was some
fire.
straight baller shit there. Like the stuff that he was saying, that was just like that guy is like egging BVD on, and the thing is like that kind of thing that can go south.
Hmm.
It can go south. It can like land on with egg on his face, and what happens? He's the MVP of the entire event. It makes him look even more of a badass when that kind of thing works off.
Well, that's
And
exactly what we
that's
need: more characters, more
we
stories. Because
do. I mean, the thing is like behind the scenes, like we know a little bit about Canny. Behind the scenes, we know a little bit about Detrony and Sonic and JT and Fady and Flexi. We know a little bit about these guys. But the thing is, if they have those personas, if they project themselves a little bit better, they get those mad fans, and then those mad fans basically allow them to build their own brand. And that's what we need. Like, just as a caster needs to grow his own brand, a player needs to grow his own brand. Right? And
exactly,
that's the thing you need to understand is because Canny is a baller, and because of like the crap he's saying at ESL, like you can see he's like kind of, like really egging BVD on. And like I said, if he falls on his face at the event, everybody's like, but then you still remember him, and that's the difference. It's like, yeah, he might talk a lot of crap, and he might fail, but you still remember him because he talked a lot of crap.
yeah. I actually had an exchange with the Bravado players right before they went on for the final because I was doing I think I was doing a. Oh yeah, I met a fan and like wanted a selfie and that sort of thing. And it happened to be sort of behind the stage where the Bravado guys were getting ready to go on. So I just like went up to them and said, "Hey guys, like good luck for the final and whatever." And one of them joked with me about like how I've sort of been talking up Sonic and bit of a a wiener sucking joke in there too. Little bit of shade coming my way. And then one of them also said, but we know you're a closet energy fan anyway, and I actually said to them, yeah, I like what Energy do, but I also like what you guys do, and let's be honest, that's really about the story at the end of the day. I mean, if you guys go out there and you win, then the story is that you guys, came back after losing at ESWC and you showed why you're the best, and that's a great story. But equally, if you guys lose, it's a great story because Energy sort of underline their credentials and they show this whole story of Black Poison coming in and whatever. And I said to them, either way, whether I've predicted that you're going to win or that you're going to lose, if I look good about it, great. If I look bad about it, great too. It doesn't matter, but it adds to the story. So to me, I don't really mind either way, but good luck anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think that really made them feel particularly good, but my sort of thought there is, I'm not a fan of anything specifically as a caster or as an analyst. For me, it's about the story, and whatever happens, the story has an angle and it's compelling.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
unfortunately,
I
they
think that's the
didn't
one thing
win.
that players have to understand is that casters and analysts. I mean, it goes back to the very first thing that I said is that like we don't know how you think. Like we can say why we think you did what you did, but that's filtered through our perspectives on life and our experiences. So when we're saying something is like we don't agree with something, it's not an outright attack on you. It's literally this is why it's like I'm saying X. It's my perspective. Like you guys can hate it as much as you want. It's still a perspective. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm right. It doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. But this is why I'm saying what I am saying. And that's, I think, like players too often think that we're out to get them, especially when we call them bad. But it's because like if it's like that old maxim, if everybody's good, then nobody is,
Hmm.
right? Because if I say that, player player number 5 from Team Y is as good as Sonic, right? And no, everybody's as good as Sonic. Okay, but then like what does that actually matter? You know, because like we often use Sonic, but I mean I'd say that Sonic, given his last couple of performances, probably isn't the best in the country. But the simple fact of the matter is that like it's because of those kind of things where you can actually start saying who is the most impactful. Because Canny, before ESL Africa, if you looked at his stats, wasn't a good player in BVD versus Energy matchups. He was actually the worst performing player out of both teams going into those matchups. Right?
And then blows it apart.
Against any other team, Canny is a monster. I mean, we remember those games where he would just tear apart DC like they were, you know, a complete Nova 4s in some of those games of the shots he's hitting. Put him against BVD, like he would repeatedly just crack under the pressure. At ESL, he's the guy that makes the monster plays to get them out of a hole against Limitless, and then makes even bigger plays against BVD in 1 or 2 rounds. And again, like it's a game-breaking play. He didn't need to put up, you know, like 50 frags every series. It's the 5 or 6 that he makes that have such a shattering effect on the opponent's play and all the rest that can tell us this is the story of Canny.
And that's that whole narrative as well of where he, before ESWC, where he'd never won on LAN versus Bravado.
Yeah.
And now he's done it twice.
He's done it in. They are 6-1 in their last 7 matches against Bravado, and before that they hadn't won a single game on LAN.
And that's also where Canny, as you say, goes from failing even when they did win. If you look at statistically, of course they won, so I mean it's not really a failure, but goes to being the tournament MVP at the biggest tournament in South African CS history. So I mean that's amazing story stuff, and guys have got to realize we need more of that stuff, because that kind of stuff is what brings the fans that aren't necessarily players, that maybe would make a lower level player watch rather than play his Nova 4 matchmaking game, you know. It's that kind of stuff that keeps people, and we need more of those characters.
It's that kind of stuff that makes Zane, the guy at ESL, ask us why Canny's having a bad game. Because he's invested in Canny. Canny is like his favorite player. So he'll come to us and he says, like, no, Canny was giving him a heart attack tonight. And we're like, why? He's like, no, he played bad tonight. It's that, like, he's invested in Canny as a player. Right? And that's the kind of thing.
Yeah, this is a camera guy who had done soccer and things like that, who doesn't know anything about CS and has become one of the craziest, most sort of rabid energy fans from buying into the narrative, watching the game, starting to understand what's going on. And I mean, we've spoken about him on Deeper before, but he's, you know, to me, he's like emblematic of how esports can transcend, you know, whether you're a player or not. And I think that we need more of that. And again, he was exposed for a few weeks to it and then just fell in love with it. So we need more people like that, man.
We need the fans, because the problem is right now we have players. And it's great to have players watching, but we need the wider community, the guys that don't play every day, you know, the guys that don't get to watch every single game. Because
absolutely,
when it's that guy that gets home after work and he's like, you know what, let's watch the ESL or the Metal State or the VS or the Arena streams. We need those guys watching, because I don't want them to watch things like Seven de LAN and all that kind of crap. Like, that stuff's not interesting to me. I want them to be watching CS or Dota or League of Legends or whatever the hell they choose. But the thing is, like, as a caster, what you need to do is to get people to invest in you, and you need to get people to invest in the scene as a whole. And you need to, when you're becoming a caster, you need to get your love of the game across. And you need to, I think, get your enjoyment across. If you can get those two things and you can build that around yourself, people buy in. I mean, if you look at, for instance, Camille Chikte in Dota at the moment, right? Brand new guy. Lots of people buy in. Why? Because when you listen to him, he sounds like he's having fun.
Yeah.
Right? He might not be able to do the best analytics or do the best play-by-play, or, you know, like, he's got a lot of rough edges, but that is the kind of diamond that will have to polish itself largely. But those are the kind of guys that you see, and too often you'll see guys like that. The 5 of those guys might appear in a year, and only one of them will go on. And that's the kind of thing. It's like you need to support those guys. If you like a guy's casting, tell him. If you're a caster and you enjoy doing something, and some guy says, maybe work on this little bit of thing, don't take him verbatim, because 2 things are going to happen when you're a caster. You're going to get 1 or 2 people, right? You're going to get a person that hates everything you do and tells you you're terrible. And you're going to get a person that tells you you're great at everything and you should continue.
And both are equally both not valuable.
Exactly. And that's the problem.
Yeah,
if the guy tells you you're great, you need to go back and watch. Why is what should I do? And make a judgment. If the guy offers a bit of advice, you need to go back and look at what you've done and make a slight decision. Should I change this or should I keep it? And that's the thing.
Yeah, a healthy dose of introspection and a healthy dose of realism. You're not as good as you think you are, and you're not as bad as you think you are usually as well. Because that also, if you're very have a lot of as I say, introspection, it can also go towards sort of being unfairly critical of yourself. But either way, you definitely need to always be focused on improving and not saying that you're the best or whatever. Of course, I famously tried to trigger the entire casting community earlier this year by saying something like that, and it worked because it got people doing more casting. But you can't rest on your laurels. You can't only expect to do the big events. You've got to be doing the crappy games during the week, the stuff that's not fun, that's not prestigious.
South Africa's not big enough to get away with that.
Yeah, eventually.
And I think even at international level, there's like maybe 2 or 3 casters that could get away with not casting regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like Anders and Semler maybe at international level, and even they will do some online games.
If they disappeared for 6 months, they would be superseded and they wouldn't be able to get back into it. That's the reality of it. In South Africa, we're in a sort of situation where a lot of guys think that that's the case, but it's not. It's you get forgotten quickly and you drop your level quickly. Because I know if I don't cast for a couple of weeks, it's not like riding a bike. You do get back to it, but it's suddenly like what was easy 2 weeks ago isn't easy anymore. So it requires a grind. But overall, I think we've covered some interesting topics. We've spoken a lot about your career, which was the intention, and then we've gotten a little bit sidetracked. But I think it's been a valuable conversation. I hope it helps, guys. Anything else you want to add as a final aside?
Not really. I think just keep supporting. If you guys are supporting, please do so. If you like what I do, tell me. If you hate what I do, tell me as well. I'm always open for sorry. I'm always open for learning. If you guys want to, give me any sort of pointers on what you think I should try and work on, I'm always willing to listen. You can catch me on Twitter if you want. I don't really use Facebook, so if you're going to look there, it's a bit unfortunate. But grab me on Twitter. You can insult me as much as you want. I'm probably just going to block you at most if you're really out of line. Otherwise, I'll probably just take what you say on board and try and work with it.
So as a final aside, what I will say then, based on what you just said, is again to the casters and analysts aspiring, never be afraid of being the bad guy, because it's still a story. You'll get wrecked, as I've been before, as you have been before, but it adds to the story. And sometimes on a broadcast, you got to be that guy, because if we're all agreeing, then what the hell are we talking about?
Exactly.
So thanks for watching, guys. This has been Looking Back with myself, Extremes, and Profeci. Go give Profeci a follow on Twitter at Profeci Gaming. His Twitter handle is there, of course. So, and of course, you're probably already following me if you're watching this. But if you aren't, give it a follow, give it a like. Appreciate you watching and sticking around for this long. Have a great day or evening or morning or whatever time you're watching this, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Looking Back, and the next episode of CS:GO Deeper every Tuesday from now on at 7 p.m. So this is me saying, have a great time, and you're saying,
cheers.
Thanks out.